Hi, this is Denise Mathew, and welcome to the third installment of The Energy of Emotion, where we talk about all the secrets of the solar plexus in human design. In our last installment, we talked about what it means to have an open emotional center, how being open affects your decision-making process, and also some tips on how to get the best life experiences when you're open emotionally. Today, we'll start talking about emotional waves, how they differ, and also how they show up in your life. With that said, let's get started and discover a little bit more about the energy of emotion. According to the Jovian archives, the divide between those who are emotionally defined and those who are open is about 50-50. I've talked about this before, but I'm just going to do a quick review and say that in human design, when a center is white, it's always going to be open or also undefined. And if it's colored, it's always going to be a specific color to that particular center. So if it's colored, it's considered defined or closed. So in this way, it's quite easy to know when something is undefined or defined in the body graph. As you can see in this diagram, all the centers have specific colors. So in that way, whenever you see a brown triangle on the right-hand side, you're going to automatically know that somebody has a defined solar plexus or emotional center, and that they also will have an emotional wave. So when someone has a defined emotional center, it means that there is a channel connecting the emotional center to one of four specific centers, which are the will, the sacral, the root, or the throat. In fact, the emotional center is also a motor. So in that way, in human design, if you have a defined emotional center, it's always going to be motorized or energized, and you will have what's called an emotional wave. There are 7 different channels that can define a solar plexus. They consist of 2 individual waves, 2 collective waves, and 3 tribal waves. We'll talk a little bit more about what they mean in just a minute. So to be emotionally defined, you only need to have one channel defined. But in reality, you can have more than one channel defined. In fact, you can have almost all channels defined. And in this way, how you experience emotion is completely unique to your individual body graph. So if we start off talking about the tribal waves, we can see that there are 3 different tribal waves: the 59-6, the 19-49, and also the 40-37. Tribal waves may be considered a quieter wave since they can simmer in the background until they're activated or triggered. And when they are, they certainly make their presence known. Tribal energy is all about family or who you consider to be your people. These people can be biological connections or connections that you made with individuals who feel a lot like you. They may like what you like, believe what you believe, and in some way they feel as if they're your people. Tribal energy comes in many different forms, from parent-child, close partnerships, and also relationships. The one theme that's common in all of these relationships is that there is a sense of bonding with another individual or individuals. Tribal energy is a type of energy that allows humanity to continue on. There is energy for sex, reproduction, nurturing, feeding, defense, and even war. It's my people against your people, and in that way it can be powerful and sometimes out of control. The question with tribal energy can be, what am I willing to do for the people I love? Add emotional energy to the equation, and the question may be, how far are you willing to go to protect those who are part of your tribe? We can see in the chart of Prince Harry that he's defined emotionally with the 59-6, which is a tribal emotional wave. Although it hasn't been shown much in the past, since his marriage with the new addition to the family, it seems his tribal energy has activated to the point where he feels as if he needs to protect his family from many people, especially the media. The collective waves are the 35-36 and the 41-30. The collective emotional wave and the individual waves are quite different than the tribal waves because neither of these waves need a trigger, and instead have a pattern that is less about what's happening outside of them and more about the wave cycling through without any need from outside influence. Collective emotional waves rise slowly like trekking up a mountain, and when it gets to the top, it drops dramatically, as if there's a zip line that takes you back to the bottom of the mountain in a few minutes. Then there's a short period of just hanging out at the bottom for a little while, and then you begin the slow trek up to the top, and the cycle repeats itself again. Because of the dramatic dip from the top to the bottom of the wave, there can be a time of being high when you reach the crest of the wave, that's followed by a time of being low. But because the wave begins the upward climb quite quickly, based on your unique wave, It could be a day where you slowly get better as the day goes on, or even a couple of days that slowly improve as the week goes on. By looking at the body graph of Steve Jobs, we can see that he has the 4130 defined, or he has a collective wave. Based on his biography and also interactions with other people, he was known for his quick temper that could rapidly oscillate from high to low. And one more thing about the collective waves is that because of the gates involved, there's always going to be some level of intensity with these waves. For instance, the gate 30 is part of the channel 4130, so it comes with a level of intensity. In fact, it's called the gate of clinging fire or holding on to ideas, sometimes even to the level of obsession. The gate 36 is part of the channel 3536 and has chaos in its design, since the gate 36 is a gate of chaos. There can be a lot of boredom in this channel with a need for adventure. So both of these channels, though they are considered collective with a slow rise and a quick drop and then a slow rise again, it still means that there can be some intensity with the emotional wave that people who have these waves experience. But the difference between somebody who carries a collective wave or an individual wave is the collective wave is pretty transient and quick, whereas the individual wave has potential to last a little bit longer on one or both sides. With a tribal wave, we can explain it away by saying that we have concerns or issues related to the people who we love. And with the collective wave, the lows are more transient and can be explained away as just having an off day or two. But neither of these explanations can hold true for individual waves, because just as the title suggests, they're individual, and as such, no two are exactly the same. The individual waves are the 1222 and the 3955, and are considered to have inherently within them some of the most creative energy in the human design body graph. Both waves come with what are considered high highs and low lows, and are the waves that some people consider big waves. What that means is that when someone is on the high side of their wave, they can be intensely joyful and excited, and just as easily on the low side of their wave, they can be despondent to the point of depression. And when someone is experiencing the low part of the wave, the question that invariably comes up is, why do I feel this way? Since an individual wave isn't necessarily influenced by the outside world and moves to its own rhythm, explaining why you feel the way you do can be a difficult task. This inability to explain why you feel the way you do can leave you more depressed, as the question about why you can't just snap out of it, both by yourself and other people, becomes part of your lives. This questioning of your feelings can also potentially serve to lengthen the period of the low as well, to the point where the low part, instead of lasting a few days, can last up to a week or two. That's why it's so important for someone with an individual wave to understand how they operate and to understand that their moods will shift up and down, that the shifts are a normal part of their lives, and also finding techniques that will help you through both the highs and lows of your emotional wave. Activity, creative expression, or just being away from people might be the best medicine for somebody on the low part of their wave. But only after we accept our unique configuration and see how we operate can we fully embrace our individuality. And one more thing about individual waves is that one particular wave, the 1222, allows the person who carries it to express their emotions verbally because it has a direct line to the throat. But somebody who has the 3955 without access to the throat can potentially have a lot of bottling of the emotions, and sometimes this can lead to a physical expression of the emotions and the inability to express them in a verbal way. And this can especially be seen with someone like the actor Russell Crowe, who through his numerous outbursts has shown how the potential of somebody who carries the 3955 might express their powerful emotional energy if the energy doesn't have access to the throat like it doesn't in his chart. As I said, there can be some level of pattern that people with collective and individual waves can track, but that's not always the case, especially when someone has overlapping waves. In other words, they have more than one defined emotional channel. So if someone has an individual emotional channel defined, as well as a tribal wave, if something happens to someone who they love, and depending on where they are in their emotional wave, it can potentially make that emotional wave all the more extreme. In human design, the theory is that when you have a bigger wave defined, it usually supersedes the smaller emotional waves. In other words, the individual wave can potentially mask tribal and collective waves. Now, if we look at Hugh Jackman's chart, we can see that he has the channel 59.6 defined, and that's a tribal emotional wave, as well as the 39.55. The 39.55 is an individual wave and can sometimes be considered a big emotional wave. Since Hugh Jackman isn't known for being overly emotional or somebody who has extreme outbursts, We might consider the fact that he's used meditation in his life since he was very young as a coping mechanism, as well as the fact that by being an actor, he's creatively expressing himself every day in his work and allowing his individuality to shine through. In truth, exactly how our waves work can be very individual, but with careful tracking, we can begin to recognize our unique emotional patterns and even understand what part of our wave we might be in. And if there's a gift that we give ourselves when we have an emotional wave, it's that emotions have a spectrum that ranges from despair to elation, and that's normal in life. There will always be highs and there will always be lows, and of course there will be places in the middle. And by taking the time to learn a little bit more about ourselves, we can accept ourselves for exactly who we are. Of course, there's lots more to talk about with emotional waves, but I'm going to leave it there for now. And please be sure to tune in next time as we begin to take a laser focus on tribal waves, how they can show up when you have them, and also a detailed perspective on the gates that make them up and how they work together. See you soon.